Shrutismritipurana Alayam Karunalayam Namni Bhagavadpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murtibheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyaptadehaaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya-madhyamam Asmadacharya-paryantam Vande Guru-paramparam Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we'll be looking at verse number 44. So the natural temperament or the inclinations of the Vaishya and Shudra. So here we are looking at why people choose certain occupations or why people are allocated to certain occupations based on the Varnashrama Dharma. So Brahmana, a person who has these natural qualities of Shama, Dama, Shaucham, Kshantihi, Arjavam, Jnanam, Vijnanam, Astikyam. So takes to the profession of a Brahmana. So the profession of a Brahmana would be studying, teaching, and passing on the knowledge. And doing rituals. So with respect to Varnashrama Dharma. So this person is expected to have these qualities naturally. Naturally inclined towards restraint. So as I said, so restraint not very grudgingly and complainingly. So very willingly and enthusiastically you are engaging in restraint. So that is the natural inclination or the tendency of a Brahmana. And then the quality of a Kshatriya would be Shaurya, showing valor, bravery. And then Tejaha, so very alert, sharp, competitive also. And Dhritihi, having determination. Dakshyam, being very deft and very capable. And not running away from a battle. Not running away from a good fight. And Dhanam, the tendency to give willingly, like a Karna. And Ishvara Bhava, the ability to wield control. So if someone has these tendencies or someone who is supposed to have these qualities is eligible for the job of a Kshatriya. So administration, politics, ruling. So that person is expected to have these attributes. And then here with regard to a Vaishya, so Krishi Gauraksha Vanajyam. So in the society of those days, so one who would be engaged in agriculture. So agriculture, you cultivate some and then you also share it with other people. You sell it. So that is how we get our food. So industries don't provide food, only agriculture that helps you survive. So you cannot eat a mobile phone. So India may be becoming a big producer of mobile phones, but what really brings food on our plate is agriculture. So someone who is engaged in that profession, and that person is also worried about how much I'm spending and how much I'm getting in return, because you should not run into a loss. So Krishi and Gauraksha, protecting cows, because we always had a lot of respect and reverence for cows, because cows are needed everywhere in the Vedic society. For performing karma, you need cow, you need curd, so you need ghee, you need butter, so you need buttermilk, so you need everything. Everything from a cow is very valuable. And whatever you consume beyond that, you also give it outside. So that was the business. That was the main line of business in those days. So that is why these are mentioned. Krishi, Gaurakshya, Vanijyam, and other kinds of economic activity, Vanijya. So anyone who was engaged in this profession is a Vaishya. And Shudra, anyone who is engaged in a mechanical job. So job that does not need you to take initiative, not much thinking. So that kind of a job, if anyone does, that person is a Shudra. So paricharyatmakam karna. This is also very necessary. This is not to look down upon Shudras, because everyone needs some follower. So people who will listen and do what is said, what is asked of them. So if everyone starts thinking, then there would be no one to do things. So these are people who have this natural tendency. So that class of people are called Shudras. That's all. So this whole discussion is because karma is divided based on one's own natural inclinations, so that one is able to evolve, and one is not one is not fighting against one's own natural tendencies. So you have to choose a profession which would give expression to your natural inclinations. So otherwise, if it is something opposite of that, then it would lead to frustration, irritation. So that's why most people don't have job satisfaction, because people are usually doing something that is not in tune with their natural tendencies. Because people are focusing on money, people are focusing on the monetary aspect rather than what is something that would be in tune with their natural abilities. So that is why there is frustration and dissatisfaction with job, etc. So this is why people have been following this varnashrama dharma. This is the main reason. And you cannot say it was perfect, but given the limitations, it was very good. So that it helps one evolve. That is what Lord Krishna says in the next verse. So verse number 45. स्वे स्वे कर्मण्यभिरतः संसिद्धिं लभते नरः स्वकर्म निरतः सिद्धिं यथा विन्दति तच्छृणु. So स्वे स्वे कर्मणि abhiratah. I think we saw this also in the last class. So being fully engaged in one's own profession, one's own occupation, naraha samsiddhim labhate. So one gains accomplishment, gains absolute accomplishment. So samsiddhi, one becomes successful also. So here, very clearly, success is not measured in terms of how we look at success in today's world. So success means becoming wealthy, becoming popular, and so powerful. So those are the measurements with which we evaluate our success. But here he clearly says, Sve Sve Karmani Abhirataha Samsiddhim Labhate. Just doing one's duty or one's occupation properly, one gains success. So this also means that success is not in trying to fulfill all of one's likes and ambitions and goals. Chasing ambition and somehow accomplishing it is not defined as success. Because generally that is understood to be success. So here, success is in terms of just sticking to one's occupation and doing it properly. And one who enthusiastically does it is a successful person. So this actually relieves a person of a lot of stress. Because when you are chasing success, then you have to manage peer pressure. So you have to compete and you have to compare yourself because you have to be better than someone. So that is how success is. So someone has this much wealth. So then if I have more wealth, then I'm more successful than that person. So if someone has reached a certain position in one's career, then I should reach something better than that, more than that. Then I'm successful. Otherwise, I'm not successful. So present society is always extremely competition driven. Competition is maybe wonderful for progress, but competition is disaster as far as one's spiritual growth is concerned. Because um, that is the justification that people give. So if I'm not competitive, then how will I survive in this world? So you have your own definition of survival, and then thinking only if I accomplish that, then I'm surviving. So then you have to drive yourself, motivate yourself, push yourself, kick yourself, and then be successful. So competition is good for relative accomplishments. But as far as spiritual growth is concerned, being highly competitive is a disaster, is an absolute disaster. So the competitive tendency leads you nowhere with regard to one's own spiritual growth. So Lord Krishna very clearly says that here. Swe swe karmani abhirataha. That you do it properly. See, then the other objection to that is, if I'm not competitive, there can be healthy competition. Competition is never healthy. So there can, if I don't have that healthy competition, then I will vegetate. So I will not. There won't be any. I mean, so I won't push myself into becoming better. So there won't be this desire for excellence. You don't need to be competitive to have that desire for excellence. So you can choose what you are naturally inclined towards and still be good at that without being competitive. It is definitely positive or possible. So if you choose something that your natural tendencies don't support, then you have to be competitive. So if you're doing something which is in tune with your natural abilities, then you will naturally excel because that is what comes naturally to you. So competition is not a necessary ingredient to have excellence. So this is the trick. So without being competitive, how do I achieve excellence? It is doing something that you are naturally drawn towards, that your mind gets naturally locked into, which is which is encouraged and which is well promoted by the Varnashrama Dharma. That is why it was functioning very well. So Varnashrama Dharma, we cannot go back to Varnashrama Dharma now. But we can at least take the main principles out of Varnashrama Dharma and try to implement those principles. Because it's not possible to retrace to Varnashrama Dharma. It is gone. So occupation, still it is there, but in terms of complete acceptance in the society, it is not there. So then people will start talking about reservation policy. So people will start talking about deprivation. So being deprived of one's legitimate rights. So then that will have to be seen as going against the constitution, going against the fundamental rights. So the constitution, the democratic society that we have, does not encourage Varnashrama Dharma. So does not allow Varnashrama Dharma to coexist. But still, without violating the principles of fundamental rights, we can still take the salient features of Varnashrama Dharma. So the main principles of Varnashrama Dharma and try to implement it because Lord Krishna is saying that. So that is good for one's own growth and one's own evolution. So, sve sve karmani abhirataha samsiddhim naraha samsiddhim labhate. So, being engaged in one's natural occupations. So, one gains siddhi. So, one becomes successful. And this also, just being satisfied, being happy with what one is doing, also gives a lot of contentment. So that contentment is incomparable. So contentment is never possible. Contentment and competition are antonyms. So they are opposite of each other. So if you have to be competitive, then you are never supposed to be contented, because then you cannot be competitive. So if you are contented, then it is assumed like you are lazy. So there is too much inertia. So that is why you are contented. Because contentment is looked at as being opposed to progress. And competition is looked at as something that encourages progress, promotes progress. So contentment and competition are antonyms. So they are opposites of each other. So we decide whether I want to be contented or I want to be competitive. So contentment comes from sticking to one's own dharma. So sve sve karmani, one's own karma, which is also one's own dharma. Sve sve karmani abhirataha samsiddhim naraha samsiddhim labhate. So people who complain against this as being very discriminatory in nature. So then you are choosing equality at the risk of contentment, at the risk of peace of mind. It is, I mean, it is true that there should be no discrimination. But Varnashrama Dharma, the fundamental principles, according to the fundamental principles, there is no discrimination. This is your natural inclination. This is what comes naturally to you. So that's what you do. So where is discrimination there? There is no discrimination. But if you think that you are naturally suited for something other than what the family that you are born into, then you should always have an option. That becomes an exception. That doesn't become the norm. So that exception should always be possible. But otherwise, for your own good and for the society to be functioning smoothly, then Varnashrama Dharma works very well. So this we can talk in this small group. We can talk about this, but it is not possible to implement it in today's society. So on a wide scale. So the government starts talking about it, they will be out of power. Out of power. They won't even stay in power till the next election. So they will be out of power very soon. So, but these are principles that we can implement. So as individuals, we can always implement. That is our fundamental right. So that is not, no one is going to complain about that. So we can choose jobs that that our mind is naturally drawn towards. So, Svesve karmani abhirataha samsiddhim naraha labhate swakarma nirataha siddhim yatha vindati tat shruno. So now he says, now listen to how one gains this siddhi by sticking to one's own karma. Swakarma nirataha. So sticking to one's own karma, how does one gain? Which is what we're talking about, but Lord Krishna is going to say that in his own words. Now he just says, listen, Shrunu. Verse number 46. Yatah pravrittirbhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha. So this was the favorite shloka of my guru. So yatah pravrittirbhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha. So he used to give a lot of public talks just taking this one shloka. Because the whole of the Gita can be explained through this shloka. So, you will look at the shloka. So, yataha bhutanam pravrittihi. So, from whom all these life forms are created? Yataha. Yena idam sarvam tatam. So, by whom all of these are pervaded by. So, tatam means vyaptam. Yena idam sarvam vyaptam. Swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavah. So, swakarmana, by one's own work or by one's own actions. Tam abhyarchya. So, worshipping that person from whom all of this has originated. Manavaha siddhim vindati. So a human being gains success. So a human being gains greatness. So siddhi, you can also say, so accomplishes greatness. The greatness that we are born to accomplish, for which we are born. There is no other reason we are born. So we are born only to assimilate that knowledge that I'm not limited. So that is Siddhi in terms of the Bhagavad Gita. So Yataha. So from which this whole creation has come about. All these life forms are created. So when I look at people, when I look at various life forms, what I look at is the physical form. So the physical form is made up of certain materials. So we can look at it as the physical body made up of the various organs, comprising of the various organs. And then if you go deeper, then you would go into the muscle, the tissues, blood, and then the physiological organs. So all of that. So that is made of, that is a physical entity. that is part of the physical creation. And one who is the originator of this physical universe, who creates the physical universe. So the source of the physical universe we look at as the Upadana Karan. So technically it is called the Upadana Karanam, the material cause of the universe. And then any material cannot create itself. No material can create itself. The physical body also cannot create itself. It needs another person to be instrumental in creating this physical body. First the father and then the mother. So two people are involved here, two people are necessary. So the physical body does not create itself on its own. So you always need a nimitta karana. Someone who's the intelligent cause, who decides to create using certain material. So the nimitta karanam with regard to the human body or with regard to a physical body is are the parents. So are the male and species of any organism. So physically, those are, at the individual level, those are the creators. But with regard to the creation itself, so we have a material cause, which is the Upadana Karana. And then we have an intelligent cause also, which we call Ishvara. So the material cause of the creation, we call it as Maya Shakti. Shakti. So Shakti is the material cause. And the intelligent cause is Ishvara. So that is why whenever you have a Shakti temple, a Devi temple, there will always be Ishvara around. Maybe Devi is given prominence, but there will be Ishvara. Ishvara Sannidhi will always be there. So like you have a Meenakshi temple. So prime importance in that temple is Meenakshi only. But immediately you have Sundareshwara. So you have Shiva. And vice versa also. Whenever you have a Shiva temple, generally you will have a Devi also. Because Ishvara gains that status only with regard to the creation. So if the creation was not there, then Ishvara is not entitled to that status. There is no necessity for an Ishvara. See, only if there is a creation, then you need a creator. Otherwise, we look upon the source as just Brahman. So Brahman from the standpoint of the creation is called Ishvara. So, and when there is a creation, there has to be Maya Shakti. So then what is the connection of Maya Shakti with regard to Brahman? So Maya Shakti is also a derivative of Ishvara. So Ishvara controls Maya Shakti, Ishvara wields the Maya Shakti, the material cause. Just like in terms, we see in the outside world. That whenever something is created, there is always someone who is responsible for that creation. So uses the material and then creates. So like that, Maya Shakti arises out of Ishvara. And then Ishvara uses the material cause. So that is why the Shastra gives the example of a spider. How can the material cause and the intelligent cause be one and the same? That is the question. Because material cause is non-separate from Ishvara. It is not a separate thing. So that is also consciousness only. And the intelligent cause is also the same consciousness. The content of Ishvara is also Brahman. So that is why the Shastra gives the example of a spider, which is both the material and instrumental cause. So just like the web comes out of a spider. So there is no material outside of the spider, which the spider uses. So it creates the material, comes up with the material, and then creates the spider. Creates the web. So in the same way, creation also, Ishvara creates, Brahman creates out of itself, using Ishvara, giving Ishvara that status. Ishvara assuming that status. Ishvara is nothing but Brahman. So we cannot say that Brahman gives Ishvara. So Ishvara assumes that status and then uses his own material to come up with the creation. So that is what Lord Krishna says, Yataha pravritti, yataha bhutanam pravritti. So from which all these life forms have come out of, have emanated out of, or created out of. So that Brahman, essentially it is all Brahman. Sadeva Soumya idamagra asit ekameva dvitiyam Brahman. So Brahman is the source, but not directly, but assuming the creative, the intelligence or the intelligent capacity. So becoming the nimitta karanam and then using its own material, its own raw material. So coming up with the creation. So again, the question is, why should we attribute it to an intelligent cause? So why should the creation not create itself on its own? So that we have already talked about. So yataha bhutanam pravrittihi yena sarvam idam tatam, and which remains pervading the whole creation. So once the creation is there, then Ishvara can do something else. So why should he remain pervading the creation? So why should he do that? And how does he do that? Because the verse says, Yena idam sarvam tatam vyaptam. So by which all of this is pervaded. And how does he pervade? So the answer is Ishvara pervades in the form of the laws of the universe. So that the creation adheres to. So we take the creation for granted, but the creation adheres to certain principles, certain laws, the natural laws. Suppose there is only a certain percentage of oxygen, nitrogen, etc. in the atmosphere. Then who maintains it? Suddenly one day morning, if the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere increases, then we will all not wake up. Simple. So every day, even in the night, so it has to be maintained. So there is someone who is also sustaining the creation by pervading the creation in terms of the laws of the universe. Or tomorrow morning, the law of gravity suddenly decides to disappear. So you won't be able to stand, you will be floating like a person in a spaceship. So like this Sunita Williams. So she's stuck there. So when people are desperately trying to get her back, some snag they're saying. So she's stuck somewhere in outer space. And she has not enjoyed gravity for months together. They say it has an impact on one's own muscles and tissues. So muscles start wearing out. So what are the implications that we will know after she comes back? So suddenly one day in the morning, the law of gravity decides to disappear, decides to vanish. So we will all start floating. So you're on the sixth floor of the apartment, you don't need an elevator anymore. So you can just come out of the balcony and start floating. So then slowly you will come back, or you might not come back, land up somewhere else. So you want to go to the restaurant nearby. So then you cannot go. So you will land up somewhere else. So it will be complete chaos. But Ishvara does not do that. So he is pervading the laws of the creation. The law of gravity is there. Then the forces are operating properly. So every physical law is functioning the way it should, which we all take for granted. And then the physiological laws also. The body is continuing to work even when I sleep. So who is responsible for it to work properly? So Bhagavan in the form of the the laws of the universe. So which we call the law of dharma. So this is all dharma. So the law of dharma is infallible, works perfectly. So that is how Bhagavan has pervaded the creation and is sustaining it by making the laws of the universe functioning the way they should be functioning. So that's why he says, Yena idam sarvam vyaptam, by which all of this is pervaded by. And then next line he says, Swakarmana tam abhyarchya. So by worshipping that Ishvara in the form of the laws pervading the creation. How? How do you worship? By doing the right kind of karma. Swakarmana. So this is how this is connected to Varnashrama Dharma also. If I am in tune with my natural abilities, then I am in tune with the universal order also. So I am not struggling with the universal order. If I'm doing something that is not in keeping with my natural abilities, then I'm in conflict with the universal order. So then I'm not worshipping it. So I'm allowing my natural abilities to be interfered by my likes and dislikes. My likes and dislikes interfere with my natural abilities. Because what I want is in conflict with what I'm naturally inclined towards. I want to do something, but that job is not giving me enough money. So I do something else. So I'm not in tune with my natural tendencies. So here he says, Swakarmana tam abhyarchya. So the law of karma has to be in tune with the law of dharma. This is why we we also divide values into universal values and then values specific to every individual. The universal values are like ahimsa, satya. They are all universal, which everyone is supposed to follow, adhere to. Like non-violence. I don't want someone to do, I don't do anything that I don't want someone else to do to me. I don't want someone to come in the morning and bash me up. So be violent towards me at any level. So it is expected of me that I also don't show violence towards anyone else. At all levels, violence at the physical level, violence at the mental level, violence at the level of speech. I don't want to talk, I don't want anyone to talk harshly to me. So I also don't have any right to be harsh to anyone. So I don't want negative vibes. So I should also not send any negative vibes. So what I don't want the universe to do to me, I should also not do to the universe. So these are the universal laws. These are expected of everyone. It's like what are listed in Yama of the Patanjali Yoga Shastra. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. So Ahimsa is non-violence, and then Satya, speaking the truth, and then Asteya, not grabbing what does not belong to you. So that is Asteya, not stealing, which is grabbing what really does not belong to you. So Asteya, and then Brahmacharya, showing physical restraint in terms of one's attraction towards the opposite sex. So reasonably, and so there is that biological urge also, but you are not obsessed with it. So not being obsessed. So this is an universal value because otherwise it would be infringement upon someone else's fundamental right. So that is why brahmacharya and women's right for security, so they are all connected. So one adheres to brahmacharya, then naturally one does not one is not violent towards the opposite sex. So that is an universal value. So brahmacharya is an universal value. So brahmacharya does not mean going into a forest and sitting. So complete restraint, like a Bhishma. So that oath he took for a certain reason, because of his obsession towards his father. So that is why, and he regretted later. He regretted every moment. Why did I take that oath? So that was his penance. So, so brahmacharya, you don't need to take it to the extreme level also, if, but restraint is necessary for every human being. So you have the biological urge, and you find ways to express it without showing violence on anyone. So that is why, even with regard to one's own spouse, so marital rape is an offense. So because you are violent towards the opposite sex. So that is why brahmacharya is an important value. It is an universal value also. And aparigraha, not excessively overloading yourself with unnecessary things. But unfortunately, that is how the world economy functions these days. You have to create demand. So in India, that is a problem now. So there is demand is less. So to create demand, you have to load people with things that they do not need. So what we need is very little. That is how the world economy works these days. But the universal value according to the Shastra. So aparigraha is an universal value. So not unnecessarily overloading yourself. So America has a debt of trillions of dollars. And then because the dollar is strong, they're just accumulating debt. So very funny way the economics works. So you keep on spending money that doesn't even belong to you. So you are borrowing. So you are in debt. And then you keep on spending. And still you remain rich. How can you do that? By making others poorer. That is the only way you do that. Or by making the environment poorer. Because you can always only become rich at someone else's expense. So you cannot become rich at no expense. Either either you're making the environment poorer, or you're making someone else poorer. So you are taking what really does not belong to you, accumulating debt. So not taking what does not belong to you is an universal value, aparigraha. So these are the universal values. And one is not supposed to violate these universal values. So one is supposed to adhere to the law of dharma at the universal level. And at the individual level also, one is by performing one's own duty, one is adhering to the law of dharma. So the law of karma and the law of dharma are connected. Through the law of dharma, karma, you are adhering to the law of dharma. You are in harmony with the law of dharma. And who has ordained the law of dharma? Bhagavan. So, by adhering to the universal values and individual values, you are worshipping that Ishvara. And here, Ishvara Arpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi also are included. So, you are doing what you have to do, and at the same time, accepting what the universe gives you. You are not demanding anything out of the universe. So, there is a certain sense of acceptance which we call Prasada Buddhi. Tam abhyarchya Ishwararpana Buddhi. And because there is Ishwararpana Buddhi, there is Prasada Buddhi also. So, which is what Lord Krishna elaborately, extensively talked about in the second chapter and third chapter also. So, not transgress one's own duties. So, Lord Krishna said in the second chapter, Swadharmam apicha avekshya na vikampitum arhasi. So one should be in tune with one's own swadharma. So you should not try to avoid your swadharma or transgress your swadharma. So here Lord Krishna in the 18th chapter he says Swakarmana tamabhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha. So this is how one evolves, and then one gains that chitta shuddhi. So yatah pravrittihi bhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha. So this is how one's own duties and one's own value structure. So they're all connected. In next verse number 47. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushtitat swabhavaniyatam karma kurvannapnoti kilbisham. Then he also says that if one goes against one's swadharma, then one has to pay for the consequences. So pay a big price. So for transgressing one's swadharma. So understanding one's duty and performing one's duties. So that gives antakarana shuddhi, that gives peace of mind. And going against one's duties, that only creates conflict, disharmony. And when you look at it, it seems quite evident that performing duties is only clearing one's old unpaid accumulated dues. So life is like a credit card. So you come with a lot of dues that you have to clear off in this Janma. So when Lord Krishna asks us to avoid ragadvesha, it means don't start accumulating fresh dues. Because when you are driven by ragadvesha, then you are necessarily becoming well entrenched in samsara. So you are accumulating fresh dues, which you will have to come back to clear again. So when you are in tune with your swadharma, then you have the best opportunities to clear off old unpaid dues. Unpaid duties also are a way of clearing off your debts to the society, which is what the Shastra calls it as Pancha Mahayajna. We have Manushya Rina, we have Deva Rina, we have Pitru Rina, we have Brahma Rina, and then we have Bhuta Rina also. Rinas at various levels, debts at various levels, which is another way of defining Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is just sticking to clearing your Rina. In fact, you are not entitled to seek pleasure. When you look at your own life in terms of living a life of Karma Yoga. So pleasure seeking is not an entitlement at all. So find opportunity to clear off your accumulated dues. So unpaid dues. And in between, whatever pleasure you get, then enjoy it. So seeking pleasure, that is why it is not an entitlement at all. So this is another way of looking at Karma Yoga. So this may be controversial, this may be difficult to accept. But when you look at the Shastra holistically, then it looks like this is what it amounts to. Because the Shastra asks you to reduce Kamya Karma. Just stick to Nitya Karma, Naimittika Karma, which means what? Not accumulate fresh dues. New credit. So life, you keep paying off like a credit card. In this lifetime, whatever you can, you pay off. Then you get peace of mind, Chitta Shuddhi. And with that Chitta Shuddhi, focus on Atma Jnana. So in a nutshell, this is what it is. So we'll stop here and continue. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.